Okay, thank everybody for joining us for this special class on the holiday of Sukkot. Primarily, we're going to talk about the meaning behind and some of the lessons we're supposed to learn from the four species. But we'll talk about also the general holiday and some lessons that we're supposed to learn from the holiday in itself. So the holiday, first of all, just a practical thing, the holiday starts Friday night. And even though the biblical obligation is first day of Sukkot, as we're well aware, the biblical obligation, shaking the Lulav and Etrog, the Hadashim and the Aravos, those are the four species on the first day of Sukkot, second day, third day, but primarily the first day. This year, we don't actually shake it on the first day of Sukkot, because this year, the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos. And since it falls out on Shabbos, so therefore, just like we didn't blow the shofar the first day of Rosh Hashanah, because it fell out on Shabbos, so too we don't shake the Lulav and Etrog the first day of Sukkot. So just I don't want to get into that. That's just a practical thing I just wanted to put out. We spoke about that by Rosh Hashanah, why we don't blow the shofar, the idea of safeguards and the importance of safeguards. But that's not the point of today's class. Let's move into the Lulav and Etrog for a second. So the four species. What do the four species represent? And it's an interesting mitzvah, right? Everything that we do, there's a rhyme and a reason. There's nothing in Judaism that we do that's just because. We don't have anything like that. This doesn't happen. So let's just go through our calendar. Pesach, we eat the matzah. We know because the Jewish people ran out and the dough didn't have time to rise. We spoke about it, right? Of course, it wasn't just a coincidence. It was made that way on purpose. The holiday of Shavuot, right? We receive the Torah. We stay up all night to learn. It's a custom. Even the eating the milk products, there's a reason behind it. We spoke about that. There's many different reasons why we eat the milk products. Has to do because the Jewish people just learned about the laws of kosher and it's easier and Torah is compared to milk. There's reasons. Rosh Hashanah, when man was created, Yom Kippur, the day that God forgave the Jewish people, Hanukkah, right? Even Sukkot represents, sitting in a sukkah represents God taking care of the Jewish people in the desert, right? The argument in the Talmud, if it was the clouds of glory representing, or the regular huts that they had, but they were able to survive in those huts. Why this time of year? We've spoken about that in the morning minute. We'll give other answers. Hanukkah, Purim, all the holidays, all the traditions, all the laws, everything that we have, there's a reason behind it. So now let's go into the four species. What's the connection, four species in the holidays code? What's the whole idea of shaking these four species? They're random species, right? The Lulav, right? The palm branch, the Etrog, right? The citric fruit, the arava, the willow, and the hadas, the myrtle beet, the myrtle, what's it called? So, like these things are so random. And why do we have to shake it on the? Why do we have to shake it? Why do we put them together? Right? What's the whole connection to Sukkot? Why do we even do it? And that's a question that one really has to try to understand, as we're going into the holiday. And there's many different cute ideas that have been given, and we're going to talk about some of those. And we're going to show that they're more than cute. There's depth behind it. There's real deep meanings behind the meanings behind these ideas. And then we're going to try to connect it to the holiday of Sukkot. So I want to start off first, a very famous midrash, and a very famous medrash, that, and I'm sure most of you are aware of this, but we're going to connect it, take it a little deeper meaning and connect it to the holiday of Sukkot also. And that the four species represent four different types of Jews. Right? They represent four different types of Jews. We have the Etrog. Right? The Etrog tastes good and it smells good. Right? People make Etrog jam afterwards. Right? People use the Etrog for smelling. And so it has a good taste and it has good taste. Then we have the hadas, the myrtle branch, right? That has a good smell, a good fragrance. I remember when I was living in Israel, right? When I used to go to the Kosel for Shabbos, right? So I used to go a lot of times at the end of Shabbos. A lot of people do it, right? They go at the end of Shabbos, and they hear Havdalah. There was this guy that made Havdalah, right? Right when you're walking down, everybody would hang around this Sephardic guy, phenomenal, right? And he make Havdalah in this beautiful Sephardic tune, and he would hand out hadassim, myrtle branches, for people to smell as besamim, because they have a good smell, but they have no taste, right? They have no taste. You don't do any food out of it. Then you got the lulav. The lulav has no smell, but the lulav is the branch for date tree, so it represents food, right? You eat dates. So it represents a concept of it's edible, not the lulav itself, but what produce comes out of the branches, right, has taste. And then we got the arava, the willow branch. The willow branch has no smell, no taste, has nothing, right? It's just a good old nice fashion tree. It gives you shade, right? But it doesn't have any taste. It doesn't have any smell. And the Midrash tells us that smell and taste, and we're going to have to understand why, right? But the Midrash tells us that smell and taste represents the two parts of the core ideas of our relationship with God. We know, we've talked about this many times, that the mitzvot, the mitzvot are split into two categories. They're split up into many different kind of categories, positive and negative. We have many different categories that they're split into. One of the categories that they're split into two different categories is mitzvot ben adam lechaveiro, between man and his fellow, and mitzvot between ben adam lemakom, between man and God. Now, of course, the mitzvot between man and chaveiro, between man and his fellow, is also between man and God. Right? And we spoke about that on Yom Kippur, and we spoke about that many times, right? That our morals, our interaction with people are rooted and grounded from the Torah. It tells us how to do it. But there's still the mitzvah between man and his fellow, not to speak Lashon Hara, to give charity, to be kind, right? And onwards and forward. Many of the mitzvot that have to do with that. And then we have mitzvot that are ben adam lemakom, only between man and God, keeping Shabbos. That's nothing to do with someone else. Eating kosher, right? And many prayer, right? And many other things, right, that are mitzvot between man and God. So the commentaries say like this, that food, eating something, right, which is sustenance, which means eating, right, and is sustenance, right, represents, right, of good deeds, right? Eating something, right, which is edible and sustains, represents the concept of good deeds, right? Ben adam l'chaveiro, between man and his God, between man and God, right? Between man and God. The sustenance of eating, right? The mitzvot between man and God represents by eating, because when you eat something, you become satisfied, you become full. So the mitzvot between man and God, right, are represented by eating. The mitzvot between man and his fellow, right, of course, have that a little bit too. But they also are representing smelling, because you look good upon with people. You're not doing it for that reason, but you have a good fragrance, right? Because people see, oh, you're kind, you give charity, you're nice to people, you hold the door, you don't speak evil about people, you're always looking out for people, right? You're always looking out to help other people. So there's a good smell, there's a good fragrance that's coming out of you, which is Kiddush Hashem, is sanctifying God's name. So we do it for God's name, but there's a good fragrance that comes out of you. And therefore, the two mitzvot, say the commentaries, and that's what the Medrash is trying to tell us, that there's two different kind of people, right, based on these kind of things. So there's some people that, let's just go through like this. There's some people that are hadas, right? There's some people that are much more into ben adam l'chaveiro, between man and his fellow. And they have a good fragrance, they have a good smell, but they're lacking a little bit, right? In ben adam l'makom, between man and God, mitzvot between man and God, they're lacking. And again, we're not judging anybody. This is just the mitzvah, to practice it. Look around, we see people like this. And then you got people that are more like the palm tree, right? That are more involved and more dedicated to mitzvot between adam l'makom, between man and God, right? But they're lacking in the mitzvot between man and his fellow, right? The way they act, the way they this, they speak Lashon Hara, they gossip at Kiddush, right? They're not really there to help people. So that's represented by the lulav. Then you got people that excel in both, called tzaddikim, right? Righteous people that excel in both. that they work hard and they're excelling in Ben Adam L'Makom, between man and God, and Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. They're very careful in how they interact with people. They give charity. They're nice. They don't gossip a kiddush, right? They're very careful about those things, and they're very careful in the mitzvah between man and God, and that represents by the estrog, which has a good smell and a good taste. And then, unfortunately, we have people that don't do really both. Right? They are not working on their relationship with God at all regarding the mitzvah, and they're not working on their relations with other people. They're just mean people, right? They don't give charity. They always gossip, right? They are always out to get someone else. They don't say hello. They don't hold the door. They're just not. They don't work with other people. So they are represented by the arava, right? The willow branch, which has no smell and no taste. And say the commentaries, that's the depth of the medrash, that's what it represents. So the 4 species really represent 4 different kind of Jews, 4 different kind of people with the relationship to our Father in heaven. So now, this is where the beauty comes. So now we gave an understanding what the 4 species represent and why these 4 species were picked. So now we have to understand why do we shake them? Why do we do it on the holiday of Sukkot? Why not on Pesach, right? The day we became a nation. How about Shavuos, the day we received the Torah? And why Sukkot? So there's a very interesting law, a very interesting halacha. And the halacha goes like this, that if you shake, and this is, guys, this is something very important. I've seen a lot of people not do this so correctly, right? And this is very important, right? When you're holding the lulav and etrog, right? So you have the lulav with the adasim and the aravos next to it, and on either side, right? So right, so we have the lulav, and you're supposed to hold the lulav in your stronger hand. So if you're a righty like me, you hold it in your right hand. If you're a lefty, you hold it in your left hand. You're supposed to hold it in your stronger hand because it has more. It has the aravos and it has the hadasim. Right? So you have the lulav, right, with the hadasim and aravos on either side, and then you hold the etrog, right? And then you're holding the etrog. Right? Why do we do this way? Right? Why do we do it this way? Right? So the law, before we get to that, the law is, right, that you have to, right, you have to hold it together. And you have to hold it together. If you have the lulav here and the etrog here, right, you don't really fulfill your mitzvah. I'm sorry to say, right? Because the law, the halacha is that really, right, you have to have it next to each other, right? You have the adasim on the right side, the aravos on the left side of the lulav, right? And then you have the etrog here, and they're together. So the question is, why do we have a law like this? Who cares, right? So first of all, the adasim and the aravos are connected to the lulav. And then we have the etrog on the other hand. Okay, you can say it's a little hard to connect the etrog to the lulav, right? It sort of weighs hard, heavy, could be, right? But we're still supposed to have it together. It's supposed to be touching, or at least close enough. Not separate like this, like shaking like this. Right? So you have to have them next to each other. Why? Why do we have to have them next to each other? So the commentaries tell us something very powerful. We find also the ingredients of the ketores. Right? The ketores, right, was a spice, a sacrifice that was brought in the temple, and it was a very powerful sacrifice that was brought. It had a good sense, a smell, and it says the ketores was prevented death. Right, when there was a plague in the desert, Moshe told Aaron to take the ketores, the pan with ketores, and walk around and prevented death. It's a very spiritual thing. Now, one of the ingredients is called chalbonon. Now, chalbonon it has a bad smell. It's a terrible smell. It's a terrible smell. Now, the halacha is, the law is, that if one of the ingredients is missing, no good. It's not the one ingredient of all the ingredients. And also, let's say I decided not to put chalbonon. It has a bad smell. It's missing, no good. Similar concept. We see that you can't leave out something. So the commentaries explain, and I want to bring out 2 points. Number one, right, the point number one is we realize that when we do something, we have to do it the way it's supposed to be done. Don't think that you could cut corners. Don't think I know better. Don't think I could do it in a way that, I'll get around it and whatever. No. The way God wants you to do it, the way the halacha is, that's the way it's supposed to be done. Don't try to, I have a calculation, it's a bad smell, I don't want the etrog too close, it's easier for me to hold it that way, right? I need to put my sitter in between my hands or whatever it is. No, you're supposed to do things the way they're done. There's a rhyme and reason for everything. And the Chalbon is in there for a reason. And say the commentaries like this, it's coming to teach us something very powerful. That, as we said, the Ketores, and we'll then come back to the Lulav and Etrog. And the Ketores is this powerful avoda service in the temple, right? That, as we said, Aaron went and prevented the plague from happening because of it. Chalbonon is a bad smell. It represents, and again, also this idea of all Jews. It doesn't make a difference where they're holding. Jewish people always have to stay united. We always have to make sure that we don't have sinas chinam, we don't have hatred to each other. We always have to make sure that we have each other's back. We're united together. It doesn't make a difference where you're holding. It doesn't make a difference what your strengths are. You have to be united. And that's what the Ketores represents. And say the commentaries, that's the same thing with the Lulav and Etrog. Based on this explanation, as we just said, right, that it represents all different kind of Jews. It represents the Jew that's involved in spiritual endeavors, making sure all his kosher products, and he looks for the best kosher things, and he's busy with his prayer, and it's awesome. That's great. But he's lacking a little bit in Ben Adam Chaver, and vice versa. You have someone that's great in Ben Adam Chaver. He's always nice to people, always looking out for people, and he's the nicest guy. He's giving charity, and that's great. But he's lacking in Ben Adam Chaver. He's lacking in that. Then you got the guy that doesn't do anything. You got the guy he's a good guy. He has both. We are all united together. We're all brothers and sisters. Like we said in the Avinu Malkeinu, right? Get rid of sinas chinam. We said during prayer throughout, right? Get rid of sinas chinam. Let's get rid of this hatred to each other. We have to realize that we're all united together. It doesn't make a difference what my strengths are, what your strengths are, what your relationship. We all have to work, and we all have to try to build ourselves up to our relationship with God. But don't look down at the other person. Don't say, "Oh, that guy's rotten. He speaks of Shinhara, right? He's so bad, and he steps on people's toes, and then the other guys are like that is rotten, right? He doesn't do any mitzvot or anything like that." Don't look down at the other person. Look what you have to work on. And also the tzaddik, who has both, he has to be working together with everybody. What makes him a tzaddik is not because he's separated by himself in his own place over here, right? But he is working together with everybody. He has to be united. He has to be together. We all have to be working in sync together. That's how we build each other up. And therefore, say the commentaries, and then we'll tie it back into Sukkot. Say the commentaries that's what it means. Right? If you look at it, as I mentioned, the Aravos are on the inside, right? Always on the inside. They're on the right side, on the left side over here, right? Or if you hold it in your right hand, right? So if you hold it on your right hand, the Aravos on the inside. They're touching the Etrog, right? The Etrog is held next to the willow, right? Next to the Aravos. Why is it held next to the Aravos? Because a person that needs the most help, the Arava represents someone that is lacking in Ben Adam L'Chaveiro. He's lacking in Adam L'Makom. He's lacking in both of those. The tzaddik, the one that has them both, should not remove himself away from there. On the contrary, he should be working together with him to strengthen him. That's why they have to be next to each other. And therefore, say the commentaries, that's what it means. Right? One of the explanations why it means that we have to have them together. Now, what does this connect to? What's the connection to Sukkot? Why in Sukkot? So the commentaries explain, as I said, we're going to talk a little bit about Sukkot. What is the depth behind the holiday of Sukkot? God taking care of us in the desert with clouds of glory or not? The depth of the holiday of Sukkot is that we are recognizing that we are dependent on God. We realize that our physical structure, our home, our secure structure that we rely on, the new roof that we just put on, or the reinforced steel beams that we have in our home for hurricanes, or our new fancy windows that are windproof, fireproof, all the things that we've strengthened, all the things that we have, our fence, our secured accounts, right, and our health, and our this and our that, and everything that we have, really dependent on God. We go into a temporary structure, one that could easily be blown down. Depends how strong you build it, right? Hopefully we build it strong enough, but a big one comes, it's definitely not as strong as our home. Go range, we have to go inside. Go into a temporary structure to show that we realize that we are in God's mercy. We're in God's mercy. So the holiday of Sukkot is a holiday of emunah, of faith. A holiday where we recognize and realize that we are dependent on God. That's what the holiday of Sukkot is. Excuse me. And therefore, say the commentaries, that on that holiday that we realize that we need God. On that holiday that we realize that we have to do our effort. Of course, we have to do our effort. We have to build our homes, and we have to put our windproof windows, and we have to make sure that we have secure accounts, and we have our health and all that. We have to do our effort. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like the temporary structure that we're living in because we're dependent on God. If we strengthen that, then we're able to get to a level of being able to look past everything and realize that the only way we become stronger is when we work together. When we realize that we all have to grow together, we realize that we all have to be united together. That's how we build our relationship with our Father in heaven, because we're all in this together. We all have struggles. Even the tzaddik has his struggles. That's when we can get to the epitome level of achdus, of unity. Because ultimately, our relationship with our Father in heaven is what's going to unite us together. That's what's going to be. When we stop looking at building this and the differences and all that, but we have the same common goal. It's like siblings, right, that might have not got along for a little while, but they all unite together for their parent, father or mother's, 70th birthday party or anniversary. They put their differences aside for the common goal. So on Sukkot, when we are coming to the realization within our physical lives, Yom Kippur, we're on a high, spiritual high. We spoke about that. Away from physical, away from all that. But we're now back in the reality world, a world of physical, a world of where we have our physical challenges. But we're able to recognize within that we need our Father in heaven. Then we could unite around each other and build a strong achdut, a strong unity. And therefore, that's why we shake the Lulav and Etrog, the Aravas and Hadassim, on Sukkot, to strengthen our bond together, to strengthen our unity together. And that's the depth of why Sukkot is called Zman Simchasenu, the day of our happiness. We'll talk about this probably in a morning minute. But that's the idea of Zman Simchasenu, because when we put aside all our pettiness, when we realize that we have to do our effort, but ultimately it's our relationship with God, then we have true simcha, then we have true happiness. Because we know we have to do the best we can. We realize that an extra $100,000, an extra car, an extra airplane, an extra house, whatever it is, extra suit, that's not going to make us happy. And we could get to that, and we look past our differences. So that's one idea, right, of the four species. I want to talk about two more ideas, and then we'll end the class with that. We're going to keep it, again, a little short, about a half hour. We're almost there. It's a couple more minutes. Another idea, it says the Kabbalists, right, the Sefer Behir, another famous concept, that the four species represent four parts of our body, right? Represent four parts of our body. The Etrog, which looks like a heart, right? Looks like a heart. The Hadassim, the myrtle branch, which looks like eyes. The Lulav, which looks like our spine. And the Aravos, which looks like our lips, our speech. Right? It's reminding us that we have to use all our different parts of our body, right? Our heart, which is like our organs, right? Our eyes, which allows us to see, and to the windows to everything we can't see, right? We don't know what we're missing. Okay, we can hear something. Our mouth, our ability to speak, and our spine, what keeps us upright and allows us to move around. Our mobility. We have to put them all together. We have to do that for the service of God. And we have to make sure that we unite and we do that, right, to serve our Father in heaven. Right? And when we do that, then we're able to get to true joy. And again, the same concept, do that on Sukkot, because we are able to connect to that when we remove ourselves and realize that ultimately all the physical pleasures and everything is really for a relationship with God. Now, before we get to the last explanation, I just want to talk about the concept of shaking around. So you're all familiar. We shake it up, different customs, right? I'm Ashkenazi, so I shake it up. We shake it to the right, to the back, to the left, right? Forward, right? Sorry, forward, to the right, to the left, to the back, right? To the left, up, and then down, right? Representing all parts of the world. We shake the lulav, right, around, right? That we recognize that God's relationships all over the world. But what's the idea of shaking? What's the idea of this whole thing, right? And why with the Lulav? So we gave nice explanations to represent different kind of Jews and all that. But what's the idea of shaking? So the commentators explain that the idea of shaking, right, is that when you shake something together, right, you're trying to like rattle a little bit, right? You're rattling things a little bit, right? And if you shake it too hard, right, the lulav, some people have a custom that they want to make sure the lulav shakes a little bit and goes a little bit like this. Not necessarily making noise, but it moves around a little bit. Why? Is because we have to realize that we have to rattle ourselves, right? If it's different parts of our body, if it's represents a different Jews, to really make a movement, to really change things, right? For things to really move forward, is you got to rattle yourself a little bit. You gotta move yourself around. You gotta make sure that you're not just stuck in one place. And that's the idea of shaking it. We're shaking ourselves around, right, that we're not stuck in the sand. We don't get stuck in the mud. The mud of the world, of society, the mud of the physical world. So we rattle ourselves around, right, to say that we got to keep moving. We can't just get stuck. That's on a deeper level. What's the concept of shaking of the Lulav and Etrog? Now, I want to end with a beautiful concept, a deep Kabbalistic concept that I saw written in the name of the Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai was a one of the great Iraqi rabbis, right, who lived in the turn of the century, 18th to 19th century, right? He says something very deep, and I actually did a little research on it. And he says that the four species represent the name of God, Yud Hey Vav Hey. And so I just looked through it. The Etrog, right? The Etrog has a Yud in it, right? The second last letter of the Etrog is Yud. Lulav, right, has the Vav in it, and the second letter is Vav. Hadas, the first letter is Hey, right? And Arava, the last letter is Hey, right? So all the different orders of each one has different amount of letters, right? But it's really the different parts of the letter, and it's fascinating. The Arava, it's the last Hey, the last letter of the word. Hadas is the first letter of the word, Hey and Hey, right? And then the Lulav, the Vav, is the second letter of the word, and Etrog is the second last letter of the word, right? So sort of representing all parts of four letters, right? Yud, right? Yud Hey, right? Vav Hey, right? Which Yud Hey Vav Hey represents God's name, right? The holy name of God, which we don't even pronounce, right? We don't even say it, right? Even when we're davening, right? We say it as Ado, right? We don't pronounce the name itself. It's considered one of the holy names. So what's the meaning behind that? The name of God is infused in the Lulav and Etrog, right? So I've been thinking, he doesn't explain, he just says it, right? He just says the name of God is represented in the Lulav and Etrog, right? And he leaves it at that, right? He said that's the meaning behind Lulav and Etrog, boom, right? So I was thinking that the idea of Yud Hey Vav Hey, and different names of God represents different things. But one of the concepts of the Yud Hey Vav Hey is that God that's in control of everything, right? God that's around and in control of everything. Right? So based on what we just said, the Lulav and Etrog represents, right, our physical body, represents the different kind of Jews, right? The Lulav and Etrog, right, also represents different plants from different parts, right? A willow needs a lot of water, right? A date tree, not really so much, right? The Etrog is from a different culture, from certain kind of agricultural culture, and so it represents different parts of the world also, right? And the idea is that we have to realize that when we shake the Lulav and Etrog, we should be connecting, right? That we're not just shaking a physical thing, right? Of course, just like when we blew the shofar, right? When we do physical mitzvot, we have to realize that there's infusion of spirituality and mitzvot and something that we could connect to change ourselves, The mitzvahs are there to change actions. We have to do an action because we're part of physical, right? We're partly physical. Our neshama, right, is a spiritual, but we are partly physical. So when we do a physical action that has spirituality in it, we are changing the molecules of our body into something spiritual. And therefore, the Yud Hey Vav Hey, the name of God that represents all, right, spiritual, right, is infused in the Lulav Etrog that tells us that this most physical action, right, this mitzvah that's with species and representing 4 different kind of Jews and representing the different parts of the body, even what it represents, right, is not the shofar represents the blowing of Isaac, the sacrifice of Isaac, the blowing of the of Mount Sinai, the blowing of the end of days, right? So even the mitzvah of the shofar represents this concept of spiritual. The matzah represents the Jewish people running out of Egypt, being saved, right? But the Lulav Etrog is all physical. It's all physical. Even in that, we have Yud Hey Vav Hey. We even have the name of God, right? And again, that's back to the holiday of Sukkot. The holiday of Sukkot is we take the physical and we elevate it. Right? We take wood and we take plastic or whatever it is, and we build our sukkah. But the schach, right? That's the spiritual. The physical sukkah can be made out of anything. The schach has to be made something that's gross in the ground, but it's not been used as a vessel, right? Because to remind ourselves that the schach represents the concept of God's looking over us. Right? That we didn't build anything in it, and we haven't used it for any vessel or anything like that. And that's saying that in the most physical things, we could create the most spiritual thing. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Wishing everybody a Chag Sameach. And I look forward, we will continue these classes after Sukkot. And God willing, after Sukkot, we'll have a totally new title. Wishing everybody, again, a beautiful day and a Chag Sameach and a happy Sukkot.